For those who don't know me, my name is Dennis Madsen. I'm with the Long Range Planning part of the City of Huntsville, leading the Big Picture, which is our comprehensive planning effort. And we're partnering with BASC, which is our local Bike Advocacy and Safety Committee, to bring you these speakers tonight to talk about successes in other places, specifically in Louisville, and how that can be a template for us. As we've been doing our comprehensive planning process, and I recognize a lot of familiar faces from other events, we hear over and over how the community values bicycle infrastructure and how we're pressed more and more to put good, meaningful bicycle infrastructure on the ground. So this is as much a learning experience for the city as well, to get some experience from another part of the United States and learn what other communities have done successfully. And I think hopefully y'all get some ideas as well, and take from this that we are pushing in the right direction. I know sometimes it seems a little slow, and that bike lanes seem to pop up a little more slowly than we'd like them to, but we feel like we're working in the right direction. We think this is another great step there. So I'm going to turn it over to James Moore, who's the bicycle coordinator for the City of Huntsville, and he's going to do our introductions. Thank you again for coming tonight.
When the city of Louisville had a bike summit, and some of the myself and some of the other employees went to the bike summit in Louisville to learn what they were doing, how they were doing it, and we came away with a lot of good ideas, and was impressed by the whole thing. And then about 3 or 4 years later, the city of Huntsville held its own bike summit, and Mike came down and did a great presentation. We kind of hit it off there. And a couple years ago, my wife and I went to Louisville on a trip and stopped by, and Mike and Rolf both gave me a whole tour of the city and things that they were doing. I was really impressed by that. And since then, I was really kept up with what goes on in Louisville. And if you're ever going north of Nashville toward Indianapolis, Chicago, stop in Louisville. If nothing else, go downtown and check out the waterway, because it is absolutely beautiful. But the food there is great too. And nothing else. If you go to Bardstown. Bardstown is like, that's where the real food is, okay? So, right quick, the bio. Mike Sewell is one of the owners of Gresham Smith and Partners, a leading multidisciplinary design and consulting firm for the built environment, and currently serves as the operations manager for transportation in the Midwest region. He also leads the bicycle and pedestrian-focused service line for that firm. He's received his Master's of Science and Engineering from the University of Louisville. Mike has 20 years of experience in the planning, design, and implementation of various transportation projects. He has been an instrumental part of the GSP team and has worked on the Louisville Urban Bike Network, as well as the 6th Street Bike Facilities and the Mode Share Focus West Market Street project. In January, Mike was recently named one of Louisville's top 20 most influential people in construction by Business First. In 2013, Mike was named to the Louisville Business First Top 40 Under 40 in 2012, and was honored by the Kentucky Society of Professional Engineers. Also, in 2008, Mike was named the Outstanding Young Engineer of the Year by the University of Louisville. Rolf Eisinger works as Louisville's Metro Bicycle Pedestrian Coordinator. Rolf was car-free and while he earned his BA at the University of Colorado at Boulder. Since then, he's moved to Louisville and earned a master's degree in public health from the University of Louisville. While in graduate school, Rolf raced his bike at the professional level across the country. Rolf has worked for the Louisville Metro since 2009, where he's developed a number of bicycle pedestrian programs, including helping Louisville become a bronze-level walk-friendly community and Louisville becoming a silver-level bicycle community. Started the Bike, Walk, and Sense programs, and also has added 50 new bikeway miles to the Louisville Urban Bike Network. Both Mike and Rolf have been instrumental in the transition of Louisville, and has made the past decade to transform into a bike-friendly and community. Some of the achievements are the pedestrian program has become a bronze-level walk-friendly community, and the bike program has reached silver status, as I said before, this year. So without further delay, I will introduce my buddies, Mike Sewell and Rolf Eisinger, the bike guys.
So first we're going to tell you a little bit about why we are qualified to stand on the stage. We've both got very different backgrounds, and I think we paint a pretty good picture of bookends from different people in your community. Second, we're going to go through kind of the foundation. When Rolf took over way back when and I started assisting, we laid some foundation for the city that would allow us to grow. And that growing process is covered in the pillars. Now, as soon as I see people start nodding off, we'll speed it up or we'll take a break or something. Somebody can come up and ride my little folding bike. But the pillars is where the guts of this thing is. It really shows some different real-world examples of how Louisville has grown people on bikes. And then the lessons. I mean, you're going through this process now, the big picture. There's always little setbacks. There's always some negative things that you go through. And we're going to cover a little bit of that during a QA session to hopefully kind of round this thing out. Okay, hit it. The story. Okay, you can hit it again. Now we're going to cover our stories. So I was actually born in Louisville. I'm in West Louisville. That little star right there is called Portland. And that's important to me. West Louisville is a very poor area of Louisville. The average salary there is $12,000 per family. We have 20% car ownership. And we relied on transit. So when I would go down the street with my dad to work, I would ride a bus. So it's one of those things, and I don't know that you guys have that drastic, but in a big city, you've got some dense areas, you've always got this area. I was that area. And it was cool for a long time because we would get on bikes, we'd ride around the neighborhood. It was kind of a real tight-knit community, and we loved it. We didn't know anything different. So it was one of those things where that's where I grew up. But something happened, so we moved to Indiana. So if you go across this bridge, we were looking for bigger and better things. So we moved up to a trailer. If you go across the bridge, about 20 miles down the road, take a right and go 10 or 15 years back in time, that's where we grew up. It is a place called Crandall, Indiana. No bike lanes, no nothing, no, you couldn't see your neighbors. So natural progression. I got to 16, I got my keys. See a bike. How many people did that? Yes, lots of people. Tracy did. I got my keys and I was like, I'm never looking back. I'm so done with this bike. I can take girls to places. I can go to school. I can go to Dairy Queen. This is awesome. And that kind of set the tone for me for the next several years, up until about 5 years ago. Hit it. This happened. So I'm an Indiana guy driving over to Louisville every day. They shut my bridge down. Whew. I was like, what? What is going on? I used to spend 20 minutes going to work. Now I'm spending 2 hours going to work. I had to route all the way over to 65 South, which you guys know well, and go across those bridges. It was ridiculous. And one of those days in particular, I was one of the owners of the Louisville office at that time, and I had a very important meeting. I had to get to downtown Louisville, and I was late. So I was calling my boss who had flew in town to meet me. Sorry, I cannot go anywhere, and I was just fuming. It was one of those times where I was so visibly shaken and mad that I could not see straight. I was sitting, I could see downtown. It was right there. I could touch it almost, but I couldn't go. I was stuck in traffic. And then something magical happened. I kept paying attention to these people walking, and they were biking, and they were beating me. I was like, I'm done with this. So I abandoned my car. I left it on the side of the road. I turned the engine off. I didn't put the flashers on. I was done with it. So I started walking across the bridge. Hit it. This is the bridge I went across. It's 2nd Street Bridge. And it does have shared use markings in the road, but it's very unsafe. There's a lot of speed problems on the bridge. So I I started walking across on that little sidewalk. And still, I was face down, mad, still going across the bridge. And somebody rang a bicycle bell. And they passed me, and they said, hey, good morning. It's a beautiful day, isn't it? And I was like, what is wrong with this guy? I just abandoned my car. And then, 5 minutes after that, I started looking around, and I realized it was a gorgeous day, but I was so mad because of the mode of transportation I chose to get down to Louisville that I had not even paid attention to it. And that's when it clicked for me. So I'm done. I'm riding my bike. After this, I started riding across the 2nd Street Bridge. It was a 3-mile round trip from where I was taking my bike, getting out of my car when I'd hit traffic, leaving my ar, free parking everywhere, and bike downtown. Worked perfect. I still could wear dress clothes. I'd wear a suit. Didn't matter. And I went bike crazy. Rolf remembers this phase and everyone goes through these different phases of bicycling. I was like, oh my God, I'm on a bike. Do you see me on a bike? I'm on a suit, on a bike. You want a bike? Let's go bike. And everyone was annoyed with me. Hit it. And that was kind of, you go through these phases and you're real excited about bikes, and then I started paying more attention. So this is a guy that was going across the 2nd Street Bridge. It was a little icy that day, and I do year-round commuting, so I see stuff like this. This guy, was going too fast, topped the curb. That happened right across the street for me. I was on this side of the 2nd Street Bridge. I was like, whoa, I'm an engineer. By the way, it's nice to be in Huntsville because I feel super inadequate. Everyone's a rocket scientist or whatever. You guys are ridiculous. But I started paying more attention to my job as an engineer, and I'm like, can we be doing something a little bit different to make me feel a little bit safer? I know I'm not the only one. So I started doing some homework. The Ghost Bike, how many people are familiar with Ghost Bikes? Okay, you guys are cyclists probably. That marks where someone has been struck and killed on a bike. That was Jen Futrell. She was hit on Bardstown Road, which we just talked about, James's introduction. Really cool area. Lots of people walk, lots of people bike there. While they were having this ceremony, 2 blocks down the road, another person was struck on a bike. And that's when I was like, okay, something is up. Started paying attention to people like that on that far stage left, you're right. That person doesn't want to ride that bike necessarily, but they have to. Hit it. So then I started looking at me. Okay, as an engineer, I dedicate my professional knowledge and skill to the advancement and betterment of motorists. Is that what you guys said when you took your PE? How many PEs we got? Some? You say that? I didn't say that, but that's how I felt. And so I was capacity driven. I was designing roadways for cars. Hit it. It's human welfare, okay? And so when that came to that realization, we started changing the way we did business. Hit it. We developed a standard operating procedure about how we're going to address multimodal facilities on any project we touch. Public involvement with, and you guys are going through it now with big picture, public involvement as an engineer you hate. This is like my favorite part because I like to talk to people. But engineers typically hate to talk to people. We're already smarter than you. Why do we even waste our time talking to anyone else about our projects? But we started really engaging them, and I found out when we listened to people, they're the ones using it every day. They know this corridor better than I could ever know it. So we started paying attention, and we started taking that back to do our jobs a lot better. And then advocacy and raising awareness for the importance of motor, we started talking to our advocates. We started interfacing with Rolf and saying, hey, what kind of problems do you have? And then most importantly, we got on bikes. Hit it. So the outcome, and we're going to go through some of the fun stuff that happened, but this is the bare bones stuff. We pursued and achieved a gold bicycle-friendly business. We're the only one in the state, and it's an engineering and planning company. And that's important. You have to find good partners that get this mode, that get all modes. 30% of our office now bikes to work. That's a lot. That's a lot of people. The sense of family at the office is ridiculous. So everyone, if you ride your bikes, how many people ride bikes all the time? Lots of people? Okay, good. You're always smiling, are you not? You spend more money when you get to a place, do you not? And when you get to work, you're ready to work. And you see other people on bikes, you're like, hey, how you doing? This is great. I'll buy you a coffee. Let's go. But we have that at the office. And it leads to better productivity. We are the most profitable center at Gresham Smith. That's not by chance, okay?
Similar to Mike, I grew up on my bike in a small town, 12,000 people in northern Minnesota. And I would ride to school, I'd ride to swimming lessons, ride around town with my friends. And I continued riding even after I got my car. Car keys, I should say. And I got into bike racing. So I went to the University of Colorado Boulder, and I tell people I got a BA in biology, minor in biochemistry. What I really did was I came out with a PhD in cycling. So I was car-free the entire time I was there. And it wasn't just because I was trying to make a statement or I was going to be a planner or a bike ped guy. It was that it was the easier option. And as you can see in Boulder, they have shared use paths that go under the roads and get to all your destinations. It's very bike friendly. Anybody been to Boulder? Awesome. Okay, so you guys kind of know what I'm talking about. Well, I moved to Louisville, sight unseen, for my master's degree in public health. And this is where I moved into. Very different, right? Getting on a bike out here, granted with my background in cycling, and going back 2 slides, anybody recognize the guy behind me? Anybody? Lance Armstrong. The first, it was one of the only times I was ahead of Lance, but I'll take it. I had a family friend get a picture. He didn't know that that was Lance and that was me, but yeah. So that was Tour de Gila down in New Mexico. It's a 5-day stage race. It was a good time. It was very hard though. But moving on, so this is what I moved into. Very different. Trying to get around on bike was not the easiest option. During grad school, I always tailored a lot of my projects for whatever reason now is known, that I tailored them towards biking or walking. So during grad school, I did a survey with the cycling community asking them, you know, what would it take for you to bike across the 2nd Street Bridge? And this was probably 4 years before Mike ended up doing it. And, you know, a lot of it was, yeah, we can do education, great, but we need better facilities that accommodate that 60% of people who are interested in cycling but concerned with safety. So, again, going back to Louisville, right? And with public health, talking about when I got my concentration was health promotion, behavioral sciences. So understanding people's behavior. And if you want to change behavior, you got to make the alternative easier. So just like in the slide here, it's like, well, what's easier? Taking the stairs or the escalator, even though we're going to health, right, club. So it's kind of like, okay, I started in public health, but how does that lead to public works and assets? Well, when we're developing our infrastructure, you know, it's the same thing, either it be smoking cessation or losing weight or whatever it may be. What is the alternative? How can we make the alternative easier? And as we continue to build our infrastructure, if we continue to build it for one mode, that's the only mode we're going to end up having. About where Louisville started with this bike program, it wasn't that long ago, and where we are today and where we hope to go to. So in 2005, our mayor at the time, for whatever reason, ended up in Boulder for a family trip. He saw how bike-friendly it was. He came back all jazzed up, and he hosted a bike summit. Then they came out with this little bike plan. It had some action items in it. In 2009, that's when I rolled around, and we hosted our second bike summit that really acted as the building blocks for our 2010 bike master plan. It had an implementation strategy. It had a lot of quick wins. We had a lot of public involvement. And during that time, I should say, when we had the first bike summit, we became a bronze-friendly bicycle community, status-friendly community, something like that. Next slide. And some of the low-hanging fruits that came out of our bike summit were youth bicycle education program, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about this more later, but we developed a 5-day on-bike curriculum design for 3rd through 5th graders that we've taught thousands of elementary school kids how to ride safely, but even how to ride. A lot of kids nowadays, they don't know how to ride because they don't have places to learn how to ride. Also, print a bike map. Do you all have a print a bike map here? Okay, great. So this was something that we didn't have at the time, and you know, came out of the bike summit saying, hey, let's create a print a bike map so people know where to go. Has our bike shops listed in it. Also, bike to work day events. We started to blow those up. Get more and more riders involved, incorporate businesses like Mike's organization. And then enforcement, right? So we were able to partner with our local police department to help us enforce the rules of the road that our students and children are learning in the bike safety program, our Bike Sense program. I'll tell you a little more about that later. Okay. Then in 2013, we got a new mayor. Great. Our bike advocates also provided our new mayor with a stalled report about our urban bike network. How, okay, we've been doing a lot of education encouragement, some enforcement, all right, but what about bike infrastructure? We really stalled out on our bike infrastructure. So the mayor called all of his bike people in his office and said, hey, what are we going to do about this? Well, we created a cross-departmental team. We came up with some goals linked back to our master plan, created a plan trying to get to silver in 2000. We were hoping to get there before now, but we got there in 2015, which was a pretty big deal for us. Next slide. And then we were trying to understand our target audience. When we're going to build bike infrastructure, understanding our target audience. And we posted a survey on SurveyMonkey, and our results were very similar to other communities' results who have asked similar questions, in that 60% of people are interested but concerned with safety. We understand there's 30%, no way, no how, and there's 7% that'll ride all the time, no matter what.
I was going to say, that guy right there, the 7% guy, you don't have to go back. I took that picture of him on one of the coldest Januaries we've had. He had ice on his beard, and I'm like, okay, I got to get a picture of you before we pass. But and if we did a survey here, the results would be probably pretty close to this, and you guys are probably doing a lot of this homework now.
And then we developed a process. So we wanted to build support, build a broad-based constituency. So how did we do this? We hosted in January, a very cold day in January, a bike kickoff event. We brought the community in, we said, hey, Mayor gave us $300,000 to build 30 miles of bikeways. We've heard from you through the master plan planning. We also hosted some public outreach meetings, and this is the plan that we have going forward into the spring. In doing that, we also looked at our low stress network, looking at figuring out what are our neighborhood streets, low speed limits, low traffic volumes that we can accommodate bikes still, connecting people to their destinations. We're branding it as our neighborway network. Some communities call them their bike boulevards or greenways. Then we were looking at, okay, for those corridors that are pretty busy, that we don't have low stress streets paralleling them, we're going to look at separated bikeways. And then in the end, adding a bike share. So before we had any general funds, and I should go back and say, prior to us being awarded or allocating the $300,000 from the general budget, we did have some federal funds. And those federal funds built this network, or lack thereof. Oftentimes when we repave streets, we'll try and accommodate bike lanes, but then you get kind of a piecemeal network, or lack thereof. Next slide. So with the dedicated funding, $300,000, we're able to start filling in some of those gaps. And as you can see, after we spent about $350,000, we really had the beginning of a network where in downtown we had over 80 miles of facilities. Some of those were previous, obviously, including shared use paths, neighborways, and then additional bike lanes, buffered bike lanes, and so on. And then here's where we are today with the green lines being our neighborways, branding those, highlighting them. But now you can actually ride from people's neighborhoods downtown to workplaces, all on dedicated facilities. And that happened in a very short period of time. And we'll talk about the 6th Street project, one that was just completed not that long, this past fall, and the process for how we went through in implementing that project. And then again, looking into the future, looking at other connections. As we move forward, realizing obviously before we put in quite a few miles of facilities, and now we're getting to the point where we're hitting those pinch points. So it's kind of lower mileage, higher costs, but real critical connections. Those are the ones we're going to be working on here in the next year or so. And then with the rollout of bike share, we were able to secure about a $1.5 million in federal funds for a bike share program that we're hoping to launch in 2017. Okay, and in addition to that, this market is evolving very quickly, especially with the advancement of NACTO. Anybody familiar with NACTO? National Association of City Transportation Officials. So cities have gotten together and developed essentially this organization saying that highway standards don't always work in a downtown urban core. So we're going to create our own set of standards guidelines, working with the feds and states on developing urban design guidelines. These are best practices from all around the country. And they've actually come out with a global design guide looking at street design guides from all over the world. It's pretty great stuff. But there are tools that we're able to use now to implement that bike infrastructure that really reaches that 60%. Okay, so we started to implement more bike infrastructure, which is great. Now I'm hearing from our Metro Council like, hey, we have to do additional education about how do motorists drive along these new facilities? What does a white line mean? Well, it never really changed. It's just, different context, right? So we're partnering with People for Bikes, national advocacy organization, on their Travel with Care campaign. Came out of Pittsburgh, and they're trying to go national with it. It's a way to humanize people who are riding bicycles. So it's not, oh, that cyclist, or oh, that motorist, but it's a mom, it's a dad, it's, coworker, as you can see. But also encouraging and educating people about rules of the road through the campaign too. So they've agreed to help co-brand some of our ads that once we buy media space, we'll just pop those ads into the media space. All right, so on to the pillars. Here we go. Mike Sewell.
Thank you, Rolf. Okay, first pillar we're going to talk about is engineering. And I got this one because I'm a calculator dork. Hit it. And I like processes. So we're going to go through engineering first, then education. We're going to focus on the Bike Sense program a little bit. Enforcement, we've got the pedestrian-focused example to give you, evaluation, and then encouragement, the fun stuff that we get to do at the end. Okay, let's go. So engineering, the 6th Street project was one of those, it was a tougher project for us because it was one of those critical north-south connections. It has a lot of parking on it. It's got a lot of bus traffic. It's got a lot of people that want to use it. So evaluating this, you really had a lot of things, and this is going to be very similar to any, it's real easy to see GIS lines get drawn, and then when you really dig into it, it always becomes a little bit more difficult. So we worked out a breakdown structure to help Rolf's group over at Metro. We had a kickoff meeting, and we bring people to the table to talk about 6th Street. Hit it? So 6th Street project goes from all the way down to so this is north. The blue line is the river up there, or the purple line is the river. And it goes right through our central business district and gets us all the way down to Kentucky, which is a strong west and east connector. So Kentucky and Breckenridge and Louisville are fully separated, really nice facilities that a lot of bicyclists use, and we wanted to get there. All right, so this is what we came up with. So our firm, we've had some hiccups in developing a lot of these urban bike networks, especially ones that are more sensitive. So we came up with a process, and the first thing was we developed a project team. We had not only our engineers and planners from our group, we had Rolf, we had a person from traffic, we had a person from public works, and we had
our transit operator.
Transit operators and park too.
Yep, and our parking authority.
So all the players, all the professional stakeholders were in a room to talk about a project. So, and if you guys have been through the design process, you know, things change and a lot of people have different opinions. Well, we hashed all that out at the beginning. The other thing, too, that will be very useful, and you can't read any of that, obviously. You just read that. It's fine. It'll tell you. I'm joking. We came up with the decision tree. So if you take a lane or you're reallocating width on a road, like a road diet has become a bad word, we worked out a process for if you're just doing sharrows, you're going to follow this process for public notification. If you're taking a lane, you've got to do this process for public notification. You got to go to the council, then you got to go to have 2 public meetings. You do door hangers. That's the kind of stuff, and we just all agreed to it. So this process was put in front of the project team and said, you guys agree? Can we sign off on this? Because we're going to follow it every time. We're not going to have any different processes after this. And then we get through the planning and design process. I'll say these quickly. Route selection, we pick routes that are going to be meaningful, that connect nodes. Our data collection, you go out, and we'll walk through these a little bit more in detail. You find out information about the corridors. You pick a different facility that's going to work for all modes. You do some preliminary design. You put it back in front of your stakeholders, and then you carry it through to engineering, true engineering, and we developed even a process to expedite the engineering design. We don't have to do a 30-page set of plans anymore. We just do the bare minimum that they can hand off and feel comfortable. They've assigned enough risk to me as a company. That's fine. And then we get it in the road. It's real quick. All right, hit it.
But one thing we forgot to mention is we meet weekly with our bike advocacy group, along with our transit stakeholder, our traffic engineer, and then our consultant, right? So we're meeting weekly on these projects to ensure that what we are talking about aligns with what the bike advocates are, meeting, I guess, essentially meeting their needs. So.
And we have an urban bike network meeting every week. So that's one where advocates come to the table as well. And the project team does not have them in it, but we do use them at those weekly meetings to kind of bounce ideas off of. Route selection, so we broke our city into 4 different components. It's going to work for a city Louisville size. It may work for a city Huntsville size, 190,000, right about that. We broke it down into 4 different sections. So central business district, connecting where people are doing business, where a lot of your traffic is probably going. Easy win projects, that's your neighborways. That's projects that have lots of capacity that you can implement something that not a lot of people are going to get riled up about. Network projects, those are those big overarching projects that tie together big chunks of your network. And then the back burner projects are things that we can't necessarily influence in our group. It's another consultant doing it, or the city's handling a different project, but we let them know we're here and we can review things for free if they want us to just give input on bike facilities. Okay? Oh, sorry, yeah, just keep hitting it. I forgot about that. I built an animation, but it's pointless. There we go. Okay, route selection. So we picked this route because we thought it had a lot of excess capacity. And we'll give you the hardcore numbers, but 5,600 ADT is not a ton of traffic. But people didn't want to give up anything. That's the thing. And per the Louisville Metro road diet policy, if it's got less than 700 cars per lane per hour on average, do it. That's what the road can handle per lane. So it met that, and there's other criteria. Obviously, I'm sugarcoating everything, but it's a good candidate. It did connect generators. It connected our central business district through residential, through a lot of different businesses, and got to our other strong east-west connectors. It filled a gap in the network, and it was a corridor that would allow a transect of acceptable solutions. So we could have a wide variety of different things we could do on this corridor, and it depended on the block. We could do the context of each block and get something that fit. And it didn't have the speed differential, so we came in 72 up there, and we talked a little bit to the city folks about it. And the speed differential, I think you could bike down that. I think it's marked for that. I don't know. But the speed differential on cars, you don't feel safe. There's no way you'd ever do that. Okay. So the data collection phase, this is the kind of things we include. And you can't read this, and neither can I, but I'm going from memory. Accident data, what types of accidents are occurring. Is a lot of rear ends, is a lot of things like that. Turning movements at specific intersections, widths of everything, and I think that's pretty much it for the initial thing. And there's the rest. Parking meters, transit routes, turning volumes, pavement widths.
Yeah, and this is a real critical piece when you're looking at a route for a bike facility is we learned that you really got to bike the route and then walk it and measure every block in the middle and figure out how many turn lanes there are. And we found out that this street, this corridor, from block to block, in between a block, the curb length or the width of the street actually changed. Like the curb line actually encroached. So it's like, well, our standard 42-foot typical that we normally implement no longer works here because at one end of the block it's 42, at the other end it's 40. I don't know how that happens, but those are things that, if you're not out there measuring and figuring this out, you're going to get the contractor out there striping. You're going to end up with like a 6-foot parking lane and a 4-foot bike lane, and it's like, well, that doesn't work.
Yeah, don't skimp on the measurings as well.
And the other piece of this was metered parking. So by walking the corridor, we found that there were several places that didn't have meters that could have meters. Super long turn lanes that we could decrease. Also, where we needed to strip parking because we didn't have enough real estate, the road wasn't wide enough, we were able to strip the parking on one side, but then working with our parking authority, figuring out where we could reintroduce and relocate parking. Because in our city, we have a parking bond that says we have to have a certain number of metered spots. It's not really revenue-based, it's just a number of spots. So as long as I, take a meter here, find another meter spot there, it all works out. So working with your stakeholders on that, it was a big part of this project as well as all the others.
So here's some of the more detailed traffic analysis, and this was capacity driven for motors. This is when we go to traffic and sell them, this is what they care about initially. And you can take notes of those, but you see the speed percentile, so it's 36 miles per hour at the 85th percentile is about average, 28, 25, around that, north of Broadway. So, and that's going from getting out of downtown, people are going real fast, they're trying to beat the lights, and then when they get to the more residential areas, they're slowing down. But the traffic, it's just no traffic. So let's go. So this is an example of one of the sheets that we will produce for review. So the first initial planning document, this is about what it looks like. We've got all the detail, and as Rolf mentioned, it changes block by block, so we include that block's segment of information on the sheet. We've adopted a green paint policy, so we go ahead and implement that on the facilities that require it. And we have the lengths on the striping, and that's pretty much all. We've talked to the people. They've got a contract for people to do the striping for them that they can just go to and say here, and we've talked to them, and this is all the information they want. They don't want a lot of other garbage on their sheets. This is enough for them. So we are happy to oblige, and we keep our process efficient. We don't spend a lot of money doing it, but we get to see a lot of benefit. We see a lot of facilities go in because of the process we've worked out. Okay? That's the green paint guideline, and we're in the process of kind of cleaning it up, making it look more presentable, I think, but it's been working really well. If you guys have done some green paint, it's expensive. It's real expensive. And so this kind of limits it. We focused on where there is conflict points on highlighting where bicyclists might be. And it seems to be working really well. We're getting a lot of positive feedback from the community on it. So, okay. The approvals after this, so this is Rolf's job. You want to talk about this probably.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to the road diets, with any bike project, especially road diets, we seek the mayor's office approval first. If they sign off on it, then we go to the affected council, members' districts, make sure that the council member is all right with it. And then at that point, we do some public press release, put it on our Facebook page, Twitter, get the word out, door hangers, and then we host 2 public meetings. And essentially these public meetings are, it's not so much of a public hearing as it's more of a public notification policy saying, hey, you know, we're gonna put this facility in based on the bike master plan, documentation, previous public meetings. Here are the plans so far. Are there any issues that we missed? You know, maybe there's a handicap spot that we didn't know about, or maybe there's something else that a community resident may bring up that we missed or whatever. But at that point, it's not really necessarily a vote, and we have the community meeting set up in a way that we have sign-in table, and then we'll have displays throughout the room. So it's not necessarily a formal presentation, because sometimes when you have a formal presentation, you'll get 3 people who are very vocal about it, against it, speak up. And then after the presentation, a few people will come up and say, I'm really for this project, but I just really want to, get up and say anything. So by allowing people to have stations to talk one-on-one with the project managers, we feel like it's a much better use of people's time, and we get a lot better feedback about the project. All right.
Okay. So there's a little bit, so we did, this was another kind of a bike public meeting where we talked about all the projects that we're doing. So our list of projects that we're helping them with, we've got about 15 or 20 projects, I can't remember now, that we're helping them get done by June. So that tells you kind of this process we've built is working, because we're putting in a lot of really good facilities that are ranking really well with the public. So that gives you a little bit of example. If you build this, I'm happy to email you this process. I've got a stack of cards, I'll send it to you. But it seems to be working very well for our city, and it's something that looks like it could be translatable to other places if you get the right people and you change it to suit your all's local needs. And it's working. Implementation, so this actually goes in really fast. The contractor we've got, and again, I'm stressing local good partners that you guys might have here. Get an engineering firm that gets it, I'm happy to help. Get a contractor that gets it and is willing to come out with the city and say, hey, this is the first bike lane, I've never done one of these, help me. And after they get a couple of them in, I mean, they're flying. So 6th Street went in literally within, that was a couple days. And it was a long project. But they got it, and they just shut down maintenance of traffic per block. They flew down through there and got it installed quick.
Another key point of this is when we put in the green pavement markings, something very different in our community, kind of one of the first times we did this kind of pavement marking. We had put in some bike boxes before, but one thing we did is put up portable message board signs, letting motorists know, or people know, yield the bikes in the green barred area, essentially. Just an easy message. It goes a long ways. So then people aren't just like, hey, you never told us what this is or how to use it. We can say, we not only did press releases or sent, notifications to the affected council members who can get it through their newsletters, but for the commuters going through the corridor, or people who may not get, whatever kind of notification we had, put it right on the street. Make it as easy as possible.
Also, portable message signs work great for public meetings too. I know that you probably have a stipulation where you have to make a posting in a newspaper. It's expensive. We have far more turnout when we put up a portable message sign that says, hey, we got a public meeting on this route tonight. Come on. Okay? And there it is. So we did trailing green. That was a really good idea. I don't know who came up with that. But the trailing green too, so when they come across the intersection, they know where they're pointing. What's that? Somebody say something? Okay. When they're coming across, you know exactly where you're supposed to be. And if anyone's ridden in D.C., you get to places and you're like, oh my God, I got to go all the way over here. And then you get through that one, and it's just much easier this way because you're already pointing in the right direction. You can see it across the intersection. Hit it. There's the mixing zone. So we've got this. This is when it comes from curbside, and this is a right turn lane that's developed.
And our contractor did a pretty good job, but again, it's critical to be on site when they're implementing these projects, because I was hoping the white lines would line up. But their truck and how they, set it, it automatically will
Yeah.
put it down. So it's, at that point, it's like they just got to get out there with the push cart and do it. So again, when first time doing it, lesson learned. Moving on though.
It doesn't look terrible. Okay, go. And there's a happy pedestrian crossing the bike zone safely. I think
Yeah, and that's
it.
another benefit to this project is it's just not about bikes, right? It narrows down the travel lanes so cars go slower. It reduces the number of travel lanes so pedestrians don't have to cross as far. And then when we had like mid-block or T intersections, we put in these delineator posts to help provide that pedestrian a little bit more of a refuge area. So
One quick thing before I take your question. Paint and post is cheap, y'all. I mean, you can put those in test zones and say, hey, we're just going to throw these up. If they don't work, we'll take them down. It's not a big deal. So if you've got some specific areas, do that. I believe people call it tactical urbanism. Throw these things down and just see if they work. If they work, great. Build some concrete. But it's cheap. I mean, this project cost what? $18,000? It wasn't a lot. Okay.
all right,
Rolf.
so jumping into our youth bicycle safety program. Do you all have bike safety in your schools, in your community centers, in your community bike safety yet? Okay. So, all right. All good. Well, here we go. Ready? Next slide. All right. Do we have any teachers in the room? All right. Next slide.
Good questions, Rolf.
School teachers for elementary school, high school.
Count about 5 or 6 LCIs in the room.
Okay, great. Okay, well, good. Okay, yeah. All right, great. Yeah. How about law enforcement? Anybody in law enforcement? No? Next slide. All right, how about advocates?
There
Ped
we
coordinators? All right, here we go. All right, just getting a feel for it.
You just wanted to work up.
I know. We'll have to stand up here in a minute. All right, next slide. All right, so next 12 minutes or whatever, learning objectives. Figure out how to gain support, expand the program, and integrate it with law enforcement for bike education for youth. Next slide. All right, how do we get started? Again, going back to our bike summit, right? That bike summit really provided the building blocks for our programs, our bike master plan. And out of the bike summit came, hey, we need additional, or well, at least we have to have some kind of youth bicycle education program, right? So next slide. So describe the program. Okay, what is it that we want to do, right? So keep it simple. We need a program that teaches youth how to ride bikes safely to their destination, right? Why is it important? Obviously, health, wellness, sense of independence. Y'all remember when you first started to ride a bike? There's like a sense of freedom. All right, next slide.
Do you remember when you were like 35 and started riding a bike again and experienced that freedom again?
All right, it's like riding a bike, you never forget.
I know.
All right, so finding your target audience. Okay, so this can be tricky, but the benefit is after you define who your target audience is, which we're focused in on 3rd through 5th graders, we teach 2nd graders how to walk across the street safely, then we get to 3rd grade and teach them how to ride safely. With youth, either you can host it in a location and ask them to come to you, but oftentimes it doesn't work. I've found it a lot easier to find, if you can find one kid, you'll find 100, and if you can go to them, you'll get a lot better response and a lot more will attend. So next slide. And that can be done by identifying your stakeholders. So I reached out to the YMCA, I reached out to our school district, and I reached out to our local community center, as well as our bike advocacy groups. Next slide. Also, when looking at a program that you're trying to implement, oftentimes it has already been implemented before somewhere else. So instead of working in silos, reach across state lines, talk to other people who've already done it, learn their lessons learned, and tailor the program to meet your needs. Next slide. Talking about curriculum, right? There are only so many ways you can tell a kid how to put a helmet on, right? So the curriculum's out there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. But these were some that I found that were really good. We have Bike Smart on Bike out of Vermont, Bike Texas, and then the League of American Bicyclists has a good program. And we basically took all of those and tailored their curricula into ours. So we call it Bike Sense. All right, next. Okay, so going going through the planning process. What do you need, right? So we felt like it was important to have bikes. So we went ahead and figured out what kind of bikes, right? You're starting over from scratch, you don't really know what kind of bikes or whatever. Small bikes, these bikes are wonderful, they're giant, they're indestructible for the kids. 20-inch bikes, 24-inch bikes for a little bit bigger kids, because reality is we have third graders as big as I am. I'm not a big guy, but still I was thinking, you know, third graders like, yeah, right, but no. And then kickstands are a must, and they rarely come standard on bikes, especially with kids, you know, they're throwing the bikes down or whatever. Makes it a lot easier, and the bikes last a lot longer. Next slide. Helmets, right? Helmets are us, sells them for under $7. You can also, when you're getting the helmets, make sure that you get them color coordinated based on size. So you're not always looking in the helmet trying to figure out, oh, that's large, that's medium. Get all the small red, all the medium blue, all the large, extra large silver. So it's super easy when you get to the school. And then hairnets, or bouffants is what they called from our service vendor, are important for headlights. Schools need those. So next slide. Also, the equipment. What kind of equipment do you need when you run a bike sense program? Pedal wrench. Anybody know why you would want a pedal wrench?
Take the pedals off.
And why would you want to take the pedals off?
Teach them how to ride.
Yes, teach them balance, right? So you drop the seat, take the pedals off, and you teach them how to scoot. If they get the scooting down, then you can pop the pedals back on, and they're good to go. All right, next slide. Other props include, you know, a placard of a car or a stop sign that one kid can hold up while the other kid is doing a mock street demonstration. Also, our printed bike map. I have a few extra copies that if you all interested, you can have one, but next slide. We use our printed bike maps for rainy days. So we ask the children, like, all right, where do you live? Where do you want to go, the community center or your school? Let's draw a line using the map. And, you know, not only are they learning how to read a printed bike map, but map orientation, figuring out how to read a map. So there are a lot of other skills tied into this Bike Sense program other than just bike safety. All right, next slide. Basically, budget of $2,200 is what we're talking about for this bike program. So not a lot. Next slide. Other funding sources out there, you have national, state, and local. One of my key funding sources are from our Share the Road license plates that people purchase. They spend an extra $30 per plate. That revenue, the revenue generated from those plates goes into a grant fund that we apply to, and we reward about $10,000 to $30,000 a year to help implement the Bike Sense program. Next slide. And then when you're going through the planning process, again, have a SMART objective, one that's specific, you can measure, it's realistic, achievable, and it has a time frame. So those are all helpful hints that I've learned through this process. Next slide. All right, so in 2010, we got a lucky break, and this is a really cool story in that when I was trying to figure out, okay, so we went through all this planning, we have this curriculum, we have the bikes and the helmets, we need a school to implement it. Which school is going to be first? The school district seemed interested, but how's this going to work? Well, while I was kind of thinking about how this is going to pan out, I got a call from a teacher asking for bike helmets. I was like, why do you want bike helmets? Well, apparently for a class project, one of her students, fifth grader, wanted to teach his fellow students how to ride bikes. He worked on bikes with his dad, and bikes were a big piece of his life, and he wanted, as his project, wanted to teach his fellow classmates how to ride. I'm like, hey, this is awesome. This couldn't work out any better. So we brought all the bikes, all the helmets, and we brought our youth bicycle advocacy group called Red Zone Cycling, and they helped implement the Bike Sense program at our first school in the fall of 2010. Next slide. And there we are at the end with the Louisville Bicycle Club, the president, Andy Murphy. We all gave him jerseys. We made it a big deal at the end after the 5 days. We gave them a little certificate, something they could put up on their refrigerator, make them feel good about accomplishing the Bike Sense program. They're really pretty excited. All right, next slide. In the spring, we expanded the program into 2 schools. We leaned on Humana, our insurance company, to help volunteer staff time, to help us do helmet fitting and some other teaching areas. Next slide. So basically the first couple days, we learn about, not only do we implement a pre-test, right away before we say anything to them. We get a pre-test because we want to gauge knowledge gain, and we give them the post-test, same as the pre at the end. But we talk about light, bright, and tight, what to wear, what kind of clothing to wear. Talk about how to check out your bike, the ABC quick check. A is for B, C, and cranks, right? You don't want your pedals falling off, right? All right, very good, yes.
Tracy gets a pin.
Yeah, all right, make note.
Champagne.
But then we also did helmet fitting, and you know, instead of like me helping each student fit a helmet, what I did was I paired them up. I said, all right, I want 10 students here, I want another 10 over there, and here's the crux. When you think you fit your helmet correctly after I tell them how to fit it, if you think you got it, you can come on up and I'll approve it. So you get them working together. And you can add an incentive saying that if they didn't get it right, they get to do, I don't know, maybe wall sits or push-ups or run a little bit or whatever. Make it fun. Physical education, got to get them moving, got to get them active. And then you always determine who can ride. Because everybody says, oh yeah, I can ride, right? But maybe they can, maybe they can't, but we have, maybe their bike is different. They're not used to this bike. So instead of, lining everybody up and having them all ride this way and they're all crashing into each other, you want to kind of do one by one to make sure that everybody, is pretty good about it. If not, don't worry about it. Don't stress about it. By the end of the program, we will make sure that you'll be able to ride. We'll spend extra time after school or whatever it takes. Because a lot of kids, it's really stressful being maybe that kid that doesn't know how to ride, right? But we have different tricks like we talked about, taking the pedals off. That really helped out a lot. All right, next slide. Then we went into the summertime, like, okay, kids will go home. How can we continue the program? Well, we partner with our community centers. And then we partner with our LMPD officers, our police officers. So the week prior to going into a community center, our officers, 2 of them, will tour around the community targeting youth on bikes, or just basically any youth. And they provide them this educational checklist. I think next slide. Let's see if it's there. Next slide. Yeah, so they provide them an educational checklist, right? Basically, it says, okay, maybe you didn't stop at the stop sign, or maybe you were kind of weaving or whatever, but nonetheless, check it out. You can use this as a reverse voucher into next week's Bike Sense program for free, whereas normally it'd cost a certain amount of money for students to attend the summer community program. We allow the students who receive these vouchers to enter our Bike Sense program for free. And I didn't come up with this program. This really came from Minneapolis, their Bike Cops for Kids program. They didn't have an educational component. It was mainly just public outreach with their officers, and they'd give away helmets as they rode around. And that's something that we're looking at doing as well. So that's what the checklist looks like. Next slide. Okay, lessons learned about targeting youth with officers. Okay, number 1 is, morning time. 8:30 to 10:30 is a good time to get your target audience. Because after that, you get the older kids out, and once you get older kids, they're checked out from the police, unfortunately. This younger kid, he was interested, but his 2 older buddies kind of were along, and they're just like, nope, not good, we're moving on. But also, talk to your officers, and next slide, and make sure that they're having fun with it, and not so aggressive, okay? Approach the kids gently, but yeah, and have fun with it. Next slide. And then other spin-offs that came from the Bike Sense program included, we started a middle cross program, so teaching those students who are interested in riding, take it to the next level. Louisville hosted Cyclocross Worlds, first time it had ever been outside of Europe, this big world event. And we're gearing up for it in Louisville, so we got kids on cyclocross bikes, riding around the dirt, working on cornering and steering, balance and dismounting and mounting. Also, we started a high school tech program for bike maintenance, and that was really cool. Next slide. As well as the bike education and the infrastructure and the enforcement and the evaluation with the bike counters, it's not all about bikes, okay? I also do the pedestrian program, so I'm bicycle and pedestrian coordinator. Oftentimes the pedestrian piece kind of gets the leftovers, but we're very, I don't know if I'd say fortunate or not, but Louisville, unfortunately, has had a higher percentage of pedestrian fatals than the national average, which puts us in the category of a pedestrian-focused city. But instead of sweeping it under the rug, we acknowledged it, and we went out for grant funds to help us curve our crash stats. Next slide. All right, but before we get into that, I want to talk about, similar to the bike plan, we had a bike summit. And again, using the building blocks from the community and what they provided, we drafted a pedestrian master plan. Next slide. We do a number of educational kind of encouragement kinds of programs like our C and B scene program, our evaluation efforts with our Big Four bridge. This is an eco counter, the silver post. It counts pedestrians and bicyclists. We averaged, I think, over 500,000 people last year over the bridge. Very active. Next slide. And then we have the walk to school days, the ciclavias. People familiar with ciclavia?
We'll talk about it later.
Okay, Mike's gonna hit that. Okay, cool. All right. And we became a bronze-friendly walk community. Next slide. But, you know, like I was talking about our crash data, because we became a focused city, we were eligible for some pedestrian safety action plan training. So the feds would come to Louisville and help us develop a plan that was action-oriented based on our crash data. So we looked at our crash data, figured out who was getting hit, why are they getting hit, what are some countermeasures that we could implement, both on the infrastructure side, but also education encouragement that could really help us curve these crashes. All right, next slide. Unfortunately, we average 16 fatals a year in Louisville, which is way too high. Doesn't have to happen. Next slide. And what was interesting in the crash data was figuring out who's getting hit. Oftentimes, or who's being killed. Oftentimes, we'd see in other cities, seniors are more likely once they get hit, they're killed or they're getting hit more often. But our target audience was 25 to 54. So 25 to 54. I mean, that's very interesting. And then it's like, how do you reach that target audience? All right, next. Oh, and I should also say they made up the majority of our crashes. All right, next. All right, so we at NHTSA, National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, released a grant opportunity, an education enforcement opportunity. So riding on the heels of our recently developed Pedestrian Safety Action Plan, we use that as the framework for our grant application. We're one of 3 communities in the country who were awarded these funds. The other cities were New York City and Philadelphia, so go Louisville. We created an org chart. So going back to the project team, figuring out who's on your team, and what are their skill sets, and how can we really drive this project forward. All right, next slide. We submitted an application that touched on these 4 pillars or projects. Pedestrian decoy operation for our law enforcement officers. We had to make sure that they knew the pedestrian laws, so make sure that they were up to speed on implementing a decoy operation. Then looking at our schools, right? Because over 30% of crashes were involving school-aged kids. And then initially it was Safe Streets for adults or seniors, but when you looked at the crash data a little more, we realized it was more about adults. So we created a Safe Streets for Adults program. We'll tell you about it in just a minute. All right, next slide. Again, looking at our crash data, we saw that inattention was number 1. And we had initially applied for like a distracted driving campaign, but NHTSA said, no, we're not that interested in that for this. We have other grant funds available to do that project on a bigger scope. But what they're interested in is failure to yield right away. So that came up as pedestrians trying to cross, motorists not failing to them in the crosswalk. That's why a countermeasure may be pedestrian decoy operation. So we're going to try that out. Next slide. We're going to spend about $145,000 over the course of 3 years. We're going to try and would result in around 900 motorists being pulled over for failing to yield to pedestrians, or even just general traffic infractions, running red lights. That's a big thing. They're like, oh, the light's yellow, maybe the light's red, I'll just keep going, right? It's not good. So with our officers, we've been able to crack down at 5 high crash locations and implement this decoy operation. So essentially the idea was we'd have an officer dressed in plain clothes with a mic up ahead to a car, another officer, so that if the pedestrian signal turned on, the officer would start crossing. If the car had failed to yield, they'd just radio ahead. They'd pull him over. Well, in Louisville, we didn't have to be that crafty. Our officers are dressed in their plain garb, their uniform, on the corner, and they can start walking across, and if the car fails to yield to them, we'll give them a ticket or a citation. But it's just not the motorists, right? We have pedestrians who are crossing against the signal. They have hoods over their head with earbuds in. You know, they're not paying attention. So unfortunately, they get the short end of the stick when they get hit, but it's everybody's responsibility to make sure that we all get home safe at night. All right, so next slide. We had to make sure that, through this process that they knew, again, what the laws are. So we created a training video for them. Next slide. And then we also wanted to create a training video for motorists. So not only are we telling officers, okay, we're implementing this decoy operation, okay, what we wanted to do is create a pedestrian safety video for motorists, and we are trying to get into our traffic schools. So those, select target audience, if you will, people who are already captive audience at that point, would get our pedestrian safety information. Next group was our youth. Again, 33% were involved in the crashes. Next slide. We wanted to create, similar to the Bike Sense program, following that same model. Let's try and get pedestrian education into the schools. Now, it's a little different because people with bikes, it's a little more active. They're moving around, so we had to figure out a way to integrate the pedestrian education into the schools. Next slide. And then our safe streets for, I have seniors, it should be adults. Got updated. But this is very similar in Louisville, where we see, wide roads, fast cars, pedestrians. The road was not built with the pedestrian in mind, but what can we do to help encourage safe pedestrian behavior? So we create a short 10-minute presentation. We go to council meetings or neighborhood association meetings or community centers. We give a pre-test, give the presentation, give a post-test. As it gets more popular, we'll have it up online. Well, it already is, so somebody could download it and present it themselves. Also do brown bag lunches, going to where you bring your lunch. We don't provide lunch. Learned that one once.
Where's our lunch, Rolf?
Right, yes. So anyways, trying to integrate this curriculum going to adults, similar to youth. It's hard after somebody has worked all day, they've picked up their kids, or they do their after-work activity to get them to come back out to something. So if we can go to them with an event that they're already interested in, it works out better. All right, next slide. All right, and then with this, going back to ours, wrote in system project manager to help out with implementing the grant, essentially. So next slide. All right, there was a limitation, though, with these funds, right? It's only education and enforcement. We don't have any engineering funds. So it would be great to do, some sidewalks along this road, but it's just not in the scope of the grant. But we've been working with our traffic department to help with some pedestrian, next slide, some pedestrian signals. And also in this example, up on top, you had 2 left turn lanes, which leads to a, blanking on the multiple threat. So one motorist may stop for the pedestrian, but the second motorist may not see the pedestrian. Be like, why is that car, stopped? They're probably on their phone or whatever. I'm just going to buzz around them, and that's when you get the multiple threat, the pedestrian getting hit and potentially killed. So we ended up working with the traffic department. We removed the dual left. Oh, and we got bike lanes on the side too. So it's kind of more of a win-win for all road users. Okay, next slide.
I'm going to show you several things that have happened in Louisville and several things that you guys could do down here to get people excited about bikes. And this is not just people that are on their bikes all the time, like your all's group. It's people that rarely might get on a bike. Okay, let's do it. So this is how, but that was how the League of American Bicyclists defines encouragement. You want to welcome and celebrate this as a mode of transportation. So we're going to show you some of the ways that we've celebrated cycling in Louisville. With number 1, Bike to Work Day. So we've done this several times. We get the mayor to come out and ride with us. We have several different nodes that we say, hey, meet up here at 7:30. We're all going to ride in together. We have hundreds of people that do this now. And then we show up downtown. We give away bikes. Rolf does a really good job of pulling together breakfast things, and we have it's a big party. The other thing we do too, and we do this at our company, is we've got a new employee that says, hey, you know what? I'm going to give up my parking pass, but I need help. I'm a little scared. We will go and we'll ride in with them. We'll meet at their house. We'll ride in with them, and we do grassroots bike to work days. We've had people at other firms and things in downtown Louisville say, hey, we saw you guys riding your bike. Can you meet me and show me what you're doing? So we do that too. So it's not just an official city put on a bike to work day. And I heard you have the ride with the mayor. Those are really great events. But see if you can get them to come out and let's show people that you can get around downtown in a more meaningful way, or in a meaningful way on a bike. Okay? Ciclovia. So has anybody heard of an open streets event? Yes? Okay. Ciclovia, it's from Bogota. They actually implemented the first one, and it's a term that means, I guess it's open street, I can't remember, but it started in Bogota. And they had so many people using their roads, they're like, we're done, we're going to shut the road down and just let people walk for a little bit and bike and just see what happens. So we put these on. We started sponsoring these several years ago. We do 3 of them now per year in Louisville. And we shut down Bardstown Road, there you go, which is a really dense, lots of restaurants, lots of bars, lots of fun things to see and do, and we make it bikes and peds only. We also have people doing yoga. There's me on a high wheel bike. There's all kinds of ridiculous things going on this street. But I'm telling you, if you go out there, there is never that many people on this road. If you go to the businesses, they're making 20 to 25% more net revenue on those days. We pick a Sunday, so there's lower traffic anyway. But, and the first one I think we put on, they were belly aching about, oh my God, you took our 3 parking spots in front. Yeah, but we've got 100 bicyclists out here that are all drinking your beer, so we're good. But that's a really powerful event. If you guys, and you do have some cool, I remember we walked it when I was here last time before, but you've got a couple strips that are really cool. Shut them down and just pick a Sunday and see what can happen. My company sponsors these events. We help you set them up too. All right, hit it. Hosted events. So how many people have worked with do we have any DOT people here? No? Well, I thought one was coming. So hosting a DOT to come out and ride their bikes with you. This is all of the people that came to, this are mostly Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, which is our DOT folks. They rarely get on their bikes. They had a lot of rusty bikes when they showed up, but at the same time, we said, hey, you're all going to be in town. I'm going to give you a little tour. We're going to show you some of the cool facilities we have. And we had, that's a lot of riders from an engineering group at the cabinet that typically pushes back on a lot of our engineering, designs that we're pushing. But they got to see different settings for bike lanes. They got to see how important tree coverage was. The city of Louisville has this really bad reputation for heat island, and we generate lots of heat. We have lots of pavement. And so we took them on some streets that didn't have any tree cover. And they saw that there's other elements, landscape architecture, proper planning, that mean a whole lot if you're really taking in your city the way you could, on a bike or by walking. So it kind of opened some eyes. I'm hoping it did. And we're starting to see some of the fruits of our labor when we take plans in. We're like, hey, remember that tree stuff that we talked about, the plantings? There's some of that stuff. They're like, oh, yeah, we remember that. It's okay. Okay. Yearly bike kickoff event. Rolf touched on this. In January, we pick a January, and we host this big party. And it's not, we do talk about bike events. We do talk about fun things we're doing in the city. But this is one where, I think that's the mayor talking there. We serve beer, we play music, we have live bands, and we just make it celebrating biking this year. And here's what we're going to do this year. We tell them about the projects we're going to be tackling. So it's fun. We get people jazzed up, and we also interface with a lot of the public. We pitch other bike events. We have the local bike shops come out, and they give away things. It's fun. Okay? Winter Bike Commute Challenge. So this is something that my firm puts on, much to the dismay of my headquarters a lot of times. But we pick a cold day, middle of winter. And there's 2 competing. So this year is the first year we did 2. So I did Louisville and Lexington. But if you rode your bike to work in the middle of winter, and I think this day was actually pretty mild. It was like 25 degrees or 20, which is, that's nothing. You guys have it good down here. 62 degrees, give me a break. The year before, it was cold. I'm telling you, it was bad. It was like 18 or 12 degrees. I can't remember, but people did it. So I give $10 a head to everybody that posts on Twitter or an open feed, Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook open accounts with hashtags to support local community bike shops. Community bike shops do a lot of good. $10 a head, that's not a lot of money. I have money in my budget. So, and let me explain. My marketing budget, I don't go buy steak dinners for clients. Sorry, Rolf. I do this, and I think it's more meaningful. So I explain to my client, I'll go buy a beer, but I don't take people out for rounds of golf. I just don't do it. I do things like this.
So we can't accept that anyways.
Exactly. Well, you get $35 a year.
My ethic training,
Good. See? Look at this.
I remember.
But you hashtag the local bike shop, you hashtag the city, and you say what's important to biking in your city for you to generate people understanding that we're there all year long. There's lots of good that comes out of biking in the wintertime too, and some people need it. So it's just raising awareness. All right. Bike brew tours. This is the first year we did this one, and it turned out awesome. So we had hundreds of people show. So we were not planned for this. So we have a lot of cool local breweries. We went to them and talked to a lot of them, and they know me for whatever reason. I've been to these places a couple times. We talked to them about hosting an event. So we said, hey, we're going to bring a bunch of people in spandex. We're going to smell bad on this Saturday. Can you give samples of your beer? And they're like, yeah, sure, whatever. We showed up at the first place on the right. We couldn't get in. It was packed. The mayor showed up. I think he had spandex on. I can't even remember. But it was packed. So they got a lot of press, and we took a tour of the city. And it was just, you didn't get a bunch of beer. You weren't like struggling to get down the road. You had a little shot of beer, and you got to talk about things, and you'd go down the road. So I think we hit, 5 or 6. Is that right?
Yeah, and they're just little tasters.
It was just fun. So no one was getting drunk. No one was imbibing too much. But it was just a fun Saturday, good weather kind of thing. You guys have some good local breweries, if my memory serves me correctly. Okay. Yeah, that one's a little touchy, but I included it anyway because we did it. General outreach. So we attend ribbon cuttings. That's big because we get in front of the council. We show them that we're there on our bikes. That's the mayor. The mayor's pretty cool with us doing this bikey stuff. And that's Andy Murphy. He's the president of the Louisville Bicycling Club. We make sure when we've got an opportunity to be on camera, we're there. And we've got our little folding bikes that everybody thinks are cute, but they also are camera pleasers. So we make sure that we're there and visible. We volunteer. That's my oldest son there. We're in the West End, right down the road from where I grew up, volunteering to show the importance of ADA compliance. So we had little things, and we just general community outreach. Make sure people are aware that there are people out there that are accessing these corridors in a different way than what you are maybe in a car. Okay? Car-free Friday, and I know I'm riding without a helmet. I ride without a helmet a lot, though. So we take tours around the city. During lunch, we get a group of people. We say, hey, meet us downstairs. We're going. And we get groups of people, and we ride to lunch. We take a tour, but you spend your lunch hour in nice weather, and you go and spend some money in Louisville, and it's fun. And we go all over, so we try to spread it out. So we might go to the West End one day, we go to Indiana another day, and we take in the city. Look, no one's frowning. So it's just a car-free Friday, and we bike to work on those days too. A lot of those same people though commute anyway. There's a guy from Lexington actually up for that day. I don't remember why he was doing there, but it's fun. So it's one of those things where you can just plan it and say, hey, city employees, I'm going to pick up your meal tab if you bike to work. Let's do this. See, he's willing to do it. Look, he's shaking his head. Thanks, Dennis. This is great. I'm joking. Don't do that. Okay. Tour de Lou. This is a new event, and I'm the chairperson of it. I went and pitched it. I'm on the board for the Kentucky Derby Fest. Anybody heard of the Kentucky Derby? It's kind of a big deal up there. I plan a bunch of fun events. So I'm on the Beer Fest, believe it or not, and the Tour de Lou, which is my new bike event. So this was the first year of the bike event, and this was after I pitched it to them. I said, hey, I think we should do this. Biking's really taken off in Louisville. And they were like, I don't know. And I said, let's do it. You have to trust me. Let me do 1 year. They were hoping to get 300 registrants. We had 1,400. And it went around the corner. It was ridiculous. It was awesome. This year we had 1,600. So it's only the second year I think we've done it. But it's one of those, these are not normal people that are on their bikes a lot. A lot of these people came out, and they're a little more experienced. We've got the mayor, we forgot to do the mayor's hike, bike, and paddle, where there's like 12,000 people that show up. So your mayor's ride, there's going to be a lot of people probably that show up to that. But this was a little more savvy people. Some of them shaved their legs maybe, but 1,600, that's a lot. So it was a fun event. Hit it. Okay, and I know we show you all this real sexy stuff. I want to make sure that you guys understand that this didn't exist. Most of this stuff didn't exist just a handful of years ago. I mean, 4 to 5 years ago, most of this stuff was not in existence. So you can do this, and that's why I believe in some of the planning process that you guys are going through. This is the roots. This is the things that you guys really need to be vocal about and really latch onto. Regardless of the side you're on for it, you need to take the good, take the bad. You take them both, and there you have big picture. No, that's not how it goes. Okay. But I believe in the process. So don't get discouraged if you don't have all these things. But do your part and volunteer. Make sure you're part of these planning processes and take a stand where you need to. But a lot of these take grassroots efforts. Stand up and start planning. Create fun events that get your community out there. Engage your local agencies. Make sure they're aware of them. Ask your leaderships. Ask them to co-host. And in the background, you need to support the good things that Rolf was talking about with education. There's always like educating businesses on Cycluvia Days. So we call it this Open Streets event. Go and talk to the business and say, hey, here's a white paper. Here's some surveys that Louisville collected. They sold a lot more pizza on Sunday when they had this thing. And take it to the businesses and educate them about how important it is. The revenue increase on businesses adjacent to bike facilities is like 30% more than if they don't. And that's white papers, people. I mean, you can take it and show them. But the focus is showing them that this is a powerful mode of transportation. I cannot tell you, and for me it was eye-opening. You get to take your city in an entirely different way. Before I was in this cage sucking tailpipe. And then you get on your bike and you walk around and you really take in your city. And it's like, this is the most beautiful place I've seen because I'm experiencing it in a different way. So this is powerful, and this helps other people experience that same thing that I went through several years ago. Okay? Hit it. Evaluation. Rolf, you want to do this one?
Yeah, that's fine. So part of our evaluation was oftentimes we would meet up with other bike planners at different national conferences, et cetera, and we always talked about what we're doing in our own cities, but we never had the opportunity to go to those cities because these conferences would be in D.C. or Chicago or wherever. So last fall, I hosted a little mini road show and invited some local, smaller towns into Louisville to showcase kind of our urban bike network, but then share lessons learned about what struggles we had and how we came over those, and hopefully they could benefit from those as well. So we invited several cities in, and we're hoping to do additional ones, hopefully maybe even in Nashville in June. So bring it out and bring you all up if you're interested. But we get to hear from other bike bed planners about, oh, I really like this, or not so much about this, or what kind of material did he use? Does that paint or whatever hold up better? Do you use MMA or thermo or the posts? How about the delineator posts? How much do they cost? So all these little nitty-gritty details, we work through the evaluations of those. And speaking of evaluations of our facilities, we're currently going through and downloading all the crash data, redoing the speed counts, doing video surveillance of our bike counts to show an increase. It'd be great to get out there and do some intercept surveys too. But at the end of the day, there are only so many hours, so we've got to kind of prioritize. But that is definitely, evaluations are critical. With some of our road diets that we've done before, we've seen between 60 and 40% crash reductions, which is a lot. Just think of, people hours lost, revenue lost from EMS being, responding to those accidents, community members affected. So all that, make sure you get great pre-data so you can get good post-data. But yeah, anyways, it's about, I think, next slide.
Oh, real quick, if you guys have a tough route, and we did this in Louisville, so we were looking at it. It was a KYTC, it was our DOT state route, and we honestly were kind of stuck. So we threw some plans down and we said, we have all these experts from other cities. We used it to, and you probably have a similar routes. You don't know what to do. Nice, Rolf. Timer's done.
Just telling you.
Okay.
Telling me.
We're almost done. There's only like 2 slides left. But we got free input out of it. So if you've got one of those routes, hosting one of these cities, you guys can come, we'll open it up to the city. We'll tell you when we're in Nashville what we're doing when there. We're going to have Memphis, Chattanooga, some people from Indiana, some people from Ohio. But we'll be evaluating facilities in Nashville for free.
All right, next slide. At the end of the road show. So just as has it, we were riding and we saw the mayor doing a photo shoot. So he came on over and wondering why we were in Indiana riding bikes during the workday. But he was happy to jump in for a photo op, and we told him what we were doing. He was very excited to see, we had other cities in learning from Louisville, but also Louisville learning from the other cities. So it's very cooperative. And that's what NACTO, I'd like to emphasize, is a lot about. They do design charrettes, so they'll do webinars. If you all have issues or we have barriers we can't figure out, we throw it up on the listserv and we say, hey, other cities, we got this question, can you help us out? And oftentimes Seattle or Boulder or New York or Chicago, they'll all chime in and say, hey, we had the same problem, this is how we got over it, here's our studies, or here's design concepts or whatever. So the environment is very cooperative, which I love about it. So next slide. All right, you're working on this? You want me to do this?
It doesn't matter.
Next slide.
I've already given the pep speech.
Yeah. So this is Big Four Bridge. It's pretty cool. This is our bike ped only bridge across the Ohio River. Like I said, we get over 500,000 users, bikes and peds that are crossing it.
You remember my 2nd Street picture, the one that I started commuting across? I stopped as soon as that opened. And it added a mile to my commute, but man, it's sweet.
All right, next slide. And that's it. So I don't think anybody fell asleep. I don't think.
We did good.
All right, thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you all very much.
All right, thanks, Mike and Rolf. That was